Hey dear friend, you're here again, and that truly means the world to me. Thank you. Wherever you're watching from, your cozy bedroom, a quiet hospital room, or maybe just a lonely moment, please know you're not alone. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I'd love to feel your presence, even from miles away. Snow fell softly. December wind whistled through bare branches outside Maplewood Elementary School. 7-year-old Paisley Chun pressed her nose against the cold classroom window, watching other children climb into warm cars with their parents. She waited alone. Again, the hallways emptied. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, gathered papers at her desk, glancing occasionally at the small girl by the window. Paisley's grandmother was late picking her up, which happened more often these days since Grandma Birdie had started forgetting things. "Someone's coming soon, sweetie," Mrs. Rodriguez said gently. Paisley nodded. She understood. Grandma Birdie was getting older, and sometimes her mind went to faraway places. But Paisley loved her grandmother more than anything in the world. Through the window, she noticed a man sitting alone on a bench across the street. He wore an expensive-looking charcoal gray coat over a navy blue sweater, and his dark hair was perfectly styled. Even from a distance, she could tell his clothes were the kind that cost more than most people spent on groceries. He looked out of place in their modest neighborhood. But more than that, he looked lonely. The man appeared to be in his late 30s, with strong features and careful posture. He sat perfectly still, watching the school with an expression that seemed both intense and heartbroken. Paisley had noticed him there before, always during pickup time, always alone, always dressed like he was going somewhere important. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Paisley said quietly. "Who is that man?" Her teacher looked up from her desk and followed Paisley's gaze. "I'm not sure, honey. He sits there sometimes. He's never caused any trouble, but he does look expensive. He looks sad. Sometimes people sit in quiet places when they're thinking about difficult things," Mrs. Rodriguez explained, "or when they're trying to figure out how to fix something that's broken." Paisley understood about broken things. Her heart had been broken for 2 years now, ever since her parents died in the car accident. Grandma Birdie said they were in heaven, watching over her like guardian angels. A familiar blue Honda pulled up to the curb. Grandma Birdie climbed out slowly, her gray hair escaping from its bun. She waved to Paisley through the window. "There's my ride," Paisley said, gathering her backpack. But as she walked toward the door, she kept thinking about the well-dressed man on the bench. Tomorrow was Friday, the last day of school before Christmas break. Maybe she could do something kind for him. The next morning, Paisley woke early. She found Grandma Birdie in the kitchen, stirring oatmeal at the stove. The old woman moved slowly these days, but her eyes still sparkled with love when she looked at her granddaughter. "Good morning, little bird," Grandma Birdie said, using her pet name for Paisley. "Ready for your last day of school?" "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course. There's a man who sits by our school. He looks lonely. Can we invite him for Christmas dinner?" Grandma Birdie paused, her wooden spoon suspended over the pot. "A stranger, sweetheart? He's not scary. He dresses really nice like he's important, but he looks sad. And Christmas is about kindness, right? You always say that." Grandma Birdie's face softened. She'd raised Paisley to have a generous heart, just like her daughter had before the accident. "What do you know about this man?" "Nothing. But maybe that's why he's lonely. Maybe he has money but no family." The old woman studied her granddaughter's earnest face. At 7, Paisley already understood things that many adults missed. "We'll need to be careful, little bird, but your heart is in the right place." That afternoon, Paisley walked out of school with determination. The man sat in his usual spot, his expensive leather briefcase beside him. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd thought, maybe about the same age her daddy would have been. His coat looked like it cost more than Grandma's car. She approached slowly. "Hello." The man looked up, surprised. His eyes were a striking blue, but filled with something that looked like pain. "Hello there. I'm Paisley. I go to school here." "I'm Jackson," he said gently, his voice cultured and careful. "Jackson Rivera." "Jackson, would you like to come to our house for Christmas dinner? My grandma makes the best turkey in Ohio." Jackson's eyes widened. For a moment, he seemed unable to speak. His perfectly composed exterior cracked slightly. "That's incredibly kind of you, Paisley, but I'm just a stranger. Grandma says strangers are just friends we haven't met yet." "Your grandmother sounds wise." "She is. We live at 412 Oak Street. Christmas Day at 2 o'clock. Paisley pulled out a piece of paper from her backpack. "I wrote it down for you." Jackson took the paper with hands that trembled slightly. "I don't know what to say. Just say you'll come. Please? You look like you need somewhere to go." He studied her face, seeing something that made his carefully maintained composure falter. "Why would you invite me? Because you sit here every day watching kids go home with their families. And you look like you wish you had somewhere to go too." As Paisley walked away, Jackson sat frozen on the bench. He looked down at the paper in his hands, then up at the little girl skipping toward her grandmother's car. His heart hammered against his ribs. The address was familiar. He'd driven by that house countless times over the past 2 years, never finding the courage to knock on the door. That evening, Jackson sat in his penthouse apartment overlooking the city, staring at Paisley's invitation. The walls were lined with awards, expensive art, and photos of corporate achievements. But in his bedroom, hidden in a drawer, was a different kind of collection. Newspaper clippings, legal documents, private investigator reports. And in the center of it all, a framed photo of a young couple with a baby that he kept face down, unable to look at it most days. His sister Sarah, his brother-in-law Marcus, and their infant daughter. Jackson Rivera was a successful corporate lawyer, worth millions at 38. But success meant nothing when it came to the biggest failure of his life. He'd been Sarah's guardian after their parents died when she was 16. He'd been 24, ambitious, and completely unprepared for the responsibility. He'd chosen his career over his sister, sent her to boarding school so he could focus on building his law practice, missed her graduation, her wedding, the birth of her child. By the time he realized what he'd lost, she'd stopped returning his calls. 2 years ago, he'd read about the car accident in the newspaper. Sarah and Marcus were gone, killed by a drunk driver. He'd learned that the child, his niece, was living with Sarah's mother-in-law. He'd wanted to reach out, to claim custody, to be the family he'd never learned how to be. But what right did he have? He'd abandoned Sarah when she needed him most. Why should he be trusted with her daughter? So he'd watched from a distance, sitting on that bench, catching glimpses of the little girl who had Sarah's smile and his own stubborn chin. He'd hired private investigators to make sure she was safe and well cared for. He'd set up a trust fund for her education. But he'd never found the courage to introduce himself. Until today, when she'd walked up to him with an invitation that felt like a gift from heaven. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. Jackson dressed carefully in a charcoal suit, then changed to something more casual. He didn't want to intimidate a 7-year-old. He bought gifts, too many gifts, then settled on a simple children's book about courage. He drove to Oak Street in his Mercedes, parking a block away so the expensive car wouldn't seem ostentatious. The house was a modest 2-story with a red door and Christmas lights twinkling in the windows. Jackson stood on the porch for 5 minutes, working up the courage to knock. Finally, he rang the doorbell. It swung open immediately. Paisley stood there in a red velvet dress, her face glowing with excitement. "Jackson, you came. I said I would. Grandma's cooking. Come in." Jackson stepped inside, breathing in the scent of roasted turkey and pine from the Christmas tree. The house was warm and lived in, with family photos covering every surface. His eyes immediately found pictures of Sarah, and his breath caught. "Grandma, he's here." An elderly woman emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She had kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. When she saw Jackson, she stopped mid-step. "You must be Jackson," she said carefully. "I'm Bertie Chin. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me. I brought something for Paisley." "That's very thoughtful." Jackson handed Paisley the wrapped book. She tore it open immediately, her eyes lighting up. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I wanted to read this. It's about finding courage when you're afraid, Jackson said quietly. Just like you coming here today, Paisley said, hugging the book to her chest. They sat down to dinner at a small table set with care. Bertie had used her best china and lit candles. As they ate, Jackson learned about their lives. Bertie was 73, a retired teacher who'd raised 5 children of her own. She'd taken in Paisley after her parents died. It's been quite an adjustment, Bertie said, watching Jackson carefully. But Paisley makes every day brighter. She invited me, Jackson said. I was sitting on that bench, and she just walked up and invited me. I've never experienced such kindness. She has a gift for seeing what people need, Bertie said. Just like her mother did. Jackson's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Her mother, Sarah. She was my daughter-in-law, always bringing home stray cats and lonely people. The room went silent. Jackson set down his fork, his hands shaking. Sarah Chen, he whispered. Bertie's eyes narrowed. You knew her? She was my sister. My baby sister. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Bertie's face went pale, and she gripped the edge of the table. You're him, she said, her voice barely controlled. You're the brother who abandoned her. Paisley looked back and forth between them, sensing the tension. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, sweetheart, Bertie said, but her voice was tight. Jackson, could you help me in the kitchen for a moment? They moved to the kitchen, leaving Paisley at the table. The moment they were alone, Bertie turned on him. How dare you? She hissed. How dare you sit on that bench and watch her like some kind of stalker? I wasn't stalking. I was trying to figure out how to. How to what? Take her away from the only family she's ever known? You threw Sarah away when she needed you most. Jackson's composure cracked completely. I know. I was 24 and stupid and selfish. I thought I was doing the right thing, giving her the best education, the best opportunities. You gave her abandonment. You gave her the message that your career was more important than family. I've regretted it every day since. I've spent the last 2 years trying to figure out how to make amends. By lurking outside her school, by making sure she's safe, by setting up a trust fund for her education, by trying to figure out if I had any right to be in her life. Bertie stared at him. You set up a trust fund? $2 million. For college, for whatever she needs. I may have failed Sarah, but I won't fail her daughter. Grandma? Jackson? Are you okay? Paisley appeared in the doorway, her face worried. Bertie looked at the little girl, then at Jackson. Her expression softened slightly. We're fine, sweetheart. Jackson and I were just talking about your mommy. You knew my mommy? Paisley asked Jackson. Jackson knelt down to her level. Yes, I did. She was my sister. That makes me your uncle. My uncle. Paisley's eyes went wide. But where have you been? I made a mistake a long time ago. I thought I was helping your mommy by sending her to a fancy school, but really I was just pushing her away. By the time I realized how wrong I was, she was angry with me. She didn't want to see me anymore. But she's not angry now. She's in heaven. You're right. She's in heaven. And I hope, she would want us to know each other. Paisley threw her arms around his neck. I always wanted an uncle. I always wanted to be one. I just didn't know how. Bertie watched this exchange with tears in her eyes. Sarah would want this, she said quietly. She would want Paisley to know her family. I don't know how to be an uncle. I failed so badly as a brother. You learn, Bertie said, echoing her earlier words. You show up. You try. You put her first. They spent the rest of Christmas Day looking through photo albums. Jackson told stories about Sarah's childhood, about their parents, about the family history Paisley had never known. She listened with rapt attention, hungry for connections to the mother she barely remembered. As the sun set, painting the living room in golden light, Jackson realized something profound had happened. He'd been given a second chance. Not because he deserved it, but because a little girl had seen a lonely man on a bench and decided to invite him to Christmas dinner. Can you come back tomorrow? Paisley asked as Jackson prepared to leave. If it's okay with Grandma Birdie. We'll need to talk, Birdie said. About custody arrangements, about what's best for Paisley. But yes, you can come back. I don't want to disrupt her life. I just want to be part of it. Then we'll figure it out together. Like family does. Jackson hugged his niece goodbye, promising to return the next day. As he drove home, he thought about the gift he'd been given. Not just Paisley's love, but the chance to honor his sister's memory by being the uncle she would have wanted him to be. He'd spent years believing he was beyond redemption. But sometimes, salvation comes in the form of a 7-year-old girl who believes everyone deserves a seat at the table. Sometimes, it comes in the form of Christmas dinner and a grandmother wise enough to know that love is stronger than past mistakes. And sometimes, it comes when you least expect it, wrapped in an invitation from a stranger who turns out to be exactly what you've been searching for all along. Jackson Rivera had found his way home. Not to his penthouse apartment, but to a family. Not because he'd earned it, but because Grace had taken the form of a little girl who understood that Christmas is about opening your heart to others, even when you don't know their story. Even when their story is more complicated than you could ever imagine. The snow continued to fall outside, but inside the Rivera family, there was finally warmth. There was finally hope. There was finally home.